So, welcome everyone for another episode of Confabulating. Today we have the pleasure to have with us Sareh Abooli. Sarah she fulfilled her bachelor degrees in visual arts and master in Islamic art history. Sarah is now a final year PhD candidate in the Center of Asian and Middle Eastern Architecture, so CAMEA, at University of Adelaide. In her soon-to-be completely thesis project, she has developed an original methodology for analyzing the representation of women in Persian paintings, employing as her lens the spatial frames and motifs through which architecture was depicted in the painterly conventions of the Timurid and Safavid eras. As an Iranian-based painter, she also has expanded practical experience in painting and participate in solo and group exhibitions, competitions, and workshops. So, welcome, Sarah.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for your.
Thank you for being with us. And I know that you are based in Australia, so right now it's quite early. So thank you so much for that sacrifice.
No worries, thank you. Thank you for having me here.
No worries, it's a pleasure. So Sarah, what are the potentialities of Persian miniature paintings as a resource to study social behavior and historical studies for you?
Actually, you know that Persian miniature painting is a very rich visual tradition of Persian and Islamic arts, and many scholars have suggested Persian miniature paintings as visual primary sources to study architecture, social, cultural, behavioral studies. And in the lack of information or the silence of written documents, like for example in my PhD thesis, I use these images to examine the changing role and power of women during the medieval era, Timurid and Safavid, as you introduced. And still, I think these images have lots of, potentiality to discover.
And okay, may I ask you something that, because it's related to the Islamic art, because we know that Islamic culture and the representation of the human body, it's something that is not very, we don't see it as we see it in Christianity, for example. So how do these Persian miniatures, how do they complete and how do they do the history? I mean, how do they tell the history? Is it just the normal history about cultural, I don't know, maybe culture, habits, it's religion, what is about those miniatures? What do they speak about?
A Persian miniature painting usually illustrate the great themes of Persian literature, like Shahnameh as epic literature, or poems of Nizami as lyrical, or Sadi. So the main function of Persian miniature painting is was illustrating the literature, not independent from the text. However, later on during the Safavid, the production of single-page paintings as dependent artworks from the literature started, but these paintings usually represent the great themes of Persian painting, but how Persian literature, but how they can reflect the history is because the contemporary events often found their way into the great themes of Persian painting. Even for illustrating the mystification of the past, the painters usually reflect kind of contemporary historical events, even to illustrate a mythical hero or lyrical character of, for example, Nizami's literature. The painter choose a contemporary counterpart for that character, so that even the past histories was illustrated in contemporary appearance. That's why we say that these images can reflect some reality, information about the contemporary historical situation, cultural and society of the time that they have been illustrated. And we know that like the poems of Nizami or Shahnameh as a great epic document of Iranian literature has been reproduced during different dynasties, like during Timurid and then Safavid, and each prince or king tried to at least have one manuscript of illustrated manuscript of that epic literature work. In each time, when painters try to depict, illustrate those poems, they reflect the attire, like the headgears and the contemporary even fashion of those time. That's why each illustrated manuscript has the sense of the contemporary information, history of that time.
And when you refer the work that you are doing, there is two notions that you mention, which is adopting the notion of vision and a theoretical framework and the space as an analytical tool. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yes, sure. Actually, my PhD study is an art historical thesis which examines the representation of women, female figures in Persian miniature painting to reveal the changing place, power, and experience of women in Persian society and culture between the Timurid and Safavid dynasties. To do that, I adopted, used architecture as a lens and vision as a theoretical framework. So I had space or architecture as a lens and then vision as a theoretical framework. And how I used vision was in two ways. First, as a culturally and historically specific way of seeing and how gaze is reflected in the visual appearance of the outer world in Persian and Islamic art. And the way I thought about this part of gaze during the thesis helped me to enhance our understanding of the multifocal perspective of Persian miniature painting, which I will explain more about it. And the second actually feature of the gaze that I used in my thesis was the act of seeing. The act of seeing in Islamic society, culture, and religion, and the way it defines codes of behavior concerning veiling and even spatial polarization of the sexes, like public, private, inner, outer, seclusion, or participation. But then, while analyzing the images, I found a kind of gap between my theory, which was gaze, and my lens, which was architecture. We know that many scholars before referred to Persian miniature painting and suggested Persian miniature painting to understand and to examine and study the medieval architecture in the absence of the architectural monuments themselves, because during the history, like because of the natural disasters like floods, earthquakes, and because of the political conflicts and wars, many of the monuments and architectural structures just destroyed, and we have only some
parts.
We have lots of actually illustrated constructions in Persian miniature painting, which illustrate lots of architectural structures from sedentary and mobile architecture, like tentage, like fortress, like palace, mosque, madrasa, or schools. So many scholars before suggested that these images, in the absence of the structures themselves, can be used as evidence. But there was a problem: how to decode these spaces. Because Persian miniature painting is not based on the linear perspective, which after Renaissance was the accepted way of representing the outer world, and all of us are familiar with those linear perspective. Persian miniature painting is based on a multifocal perspective, which juxtapose different points of view and even different times within a single frame of painting to maximize the conveyance of information. Here we can refer to
You will show us
some examples, yes, to actually I need to share my
your screen, yeah.
Screen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Starting to 1 second. Oh, yeah. Now we can see.
You can see that. Okay. Here we have an example of a folio.
Mm-hmm.
And I compared this folio with an architectural drawing. You can see that in the architectural drawing, the architects use this method of drawing to demonstrate different parts of the
building.
plan, the building, from top, from front, and to reveal the inside of the building, they cut the building and show the section. In Persian miniature painting, if you look at the folio, you can see that the space is kind of ambiguous, and it's not very easy to distinguish, okay, what's this space, even it's a bedroom or a hall, or what are the relation between these spaces. Here I have highlighted and defined the different spaces and showed how the Persian painter juxtaposed different points of views, like section, plan, and elevation, and shows the interior and exterior together. That's why decoding these spaces was the first actually problem, difficulty for the scholars to refer to these paintings as either evidence for architectural studies, social studies, or behavioral studies, because it's very important when you look at these images, distinguish, okay, what is the relationship between these two spaces? Even if the woman or the man, a king, sitting in this throne has visual access or physical access to the space beside, or it's completely separate. That's why in my thesis, I found that, okay, first I need to bridge this gap. And then I started to develop a method called folding and pop-up to revert our gaze to that three-dimensional rendition of the space instead of this multifocal two-dimensional imagery. And I can show more.
So this means this is what you did was to try to put to get these images and give them a context, right?
Yes, actually, through the examples, I can more clearly show you what will happen. Here we have two different folios of Persian miniature paintings, both attributed to Mir Said Ali, which was a Safavid painter based on Tabriz, a city located at north of Iran. One of them illustrates a very nice cityscape, as you can see. And the other one is an encampment scene, which richly demonstrates the life of tribal people within an encampment. These two folios are very rich in the social, historical, even architectural information they convey.
We are supposed to be watching a different image from the first one, or
Maybe the second one.
Sorry?
On my screen is still the first images. Did you change, or?
Yes, you can see the one.
No, it's still the same.
Okay, sorry,
No worries.
It's okay.
It's just because you are referring to like a landscape, and I could not see any.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I think it's the second.
Okay, so
The number 7, maybe.
I need to adjust that.
I just want to ask you something
Sure.
to this, because I read that this art was developed also with foreign influences. I mean, from China, and we can see it. Obviously, we can see some Chinese. I don't know how to read those miniatures, but I can see some Oriental influences, and also because of all the invasions and all this mixture, these cultures that were the Persian Empire. So, does this these images, do they also speak about those transitions, those several, because you said they speak about different eras, different kings, different. Do they also refer to these influences from the Chinese, for instance?
Yes, sure. As you mentioned, Persian miniature painting get influence in terms of elements, like the clothes, like the appearance of women, or even attire via the Silk Road and those trades between Iran and China and the lands between. But since Timurid, late Timurid and early Safavid eras, they started to reflect more Persianate elements,
Yes.
rather than Chinese elements. But still, however, was China, but still the theme, the text they were illustrated was based on Persian literature, or like historical manuscripts like Zafarnameh, which was about the triumphs and the life of Timur, or Tamerlane in English.
So, and it was a very, because I remember those names, and they were quite, I don't want to say this very, but they were quite, because it was different time. They were very violent. I mean, in terms of ruling, they were very, they were imposing their rules, and they were very, somehow very violent, even when they were invading other, expanding the Persian Empire. So when you speak about the role of women and how these miniatures they demonstrated, how do the women, how was the women role? How was to be a woman based on what we see in these miniatures?
Actually, in my thesis, I just tried to go behind the stereotypes. So I tried to first, review the history of women during the Timurid and Safavid times. And why I choose this historical scope at all was because Timurids was based on Turko-Mughal tradition, and Safavids were based on Irano-Islamic tradition. These two traditions even were different based on their social and cultural behaviors, and even architecture. Timurids were based on mobile architecture, soft architecture. They reside in tents. Instead of brick walls, they had enclosures. So within this living environment, veiling and seclusion was not practical for women. Women were very, active in feasts, in official meetings. They ride horses. They took part in wars. As Safavid turned to Irano-Islamic tradition, they more intended to reside and based on sedentary architecture. Within the sedentary architecture and getting more religious based on some transformations in the culture and society and religion, then there was wailing. There was private quarters, harems, and seclusion was part of the culture.
Yes.
But still, during my thesis, I tried to, just revise these stereotypes, because, contemporary stereotypes about Middle Eastern women reflect flawed assumptions about life in present-day Muslim societies that even has, less relevance to the historical past. And such stereotypes even tend to reflect the way scholars describe the imagery of women within the images, because in the Persian painting, we frequently see women standing at upper part of the building, especially when they are illustrated in sedentary architecture, like in balcony, behind the windows, behind the curtains. and looking at events that are taking part, like the feasts or other events. And this act of women usually is described as, derogatory descriptions like spying, prying, peeking. And in my thesis, I tried to revise these stereotypes. And why not seeing this act of seeing as a power, as trying to just cross the boundaries like the walls, like the harem, like the private quarters, to get information.
Yes, because what I'm from what you see, what you say, what I think is that if they were peeking or if they were spying, they would not be represented. If they were represented on those miniatures, that means that they were important. They had an important role in the society in that moment, right?
Sure. Yes. As they had, like even during the Safavid era, which we say that, okay, they are secluded in harems or this or that. No, they were even active patrons of architecture, active patrons of art. They were active in society. Even behind the walls, they were very influential in the political decisions. And we have lots of powerful women, even in Safavid. And during the Timurid time, that, we know that women were very powerful and quite visible in even political gatherings, feasts, and society.
Yeah, so that is a cut between what the vision of the Middle Eastern women that is built and the reality. So that means that maybe we should look, as you say, to those miniatures and revise it and to see more closer to that society and break some sometimes prejudices, right? This stereotype that,
Yeah, sure.
There is a big notion that probably women in Persia, not only in Persia, will have like basically no role at all, and it's quite neutral and doesn't almost exist the role in itself. But in matter of fact,
yes.
And like you said, it's quite extraordinary to see that, because in matter of fact, there was a big role, in fact. So now we can see another image.
Yeah. Finally, I found it. It's an example of how Persian miniature painting richly demonstrate life of people within their living environment. And here I put two extraordinary examples of Persian miniature painting, both attributed to Mir Sayyed Ali, painter based on Tabriz, a city in north of Iran, and belong to 16th century. And here you can compare how vividly the painter showed an urban escape and then encampment scene. And within the urban escape, you can see different places just compact in one frame. And I know that it's not easy to distinguish between the spaces, but we will show how the pop-up method can help us to just decode the space and enjoy the image even more. And then the encampment scene, that people, animals, and tents are just distributed in the different layers. It's an example of how Persian miniature painting, instead of a linear perspective or just one vantage point offer you multifocal perspective. And you know, in the linear perspective, the gaze of the painter is the same as the gaze of the observer. But here you have multiple access points to the image. So I think the process of decoding is kind of very you know, satisfying and enjoyable journey to understand the information. So I'm going to share another image. So you have the image now.
Yeah.
Okay. Here I have used the pop-up unfolding image to transform the two-dimensional, multifocal, original painting to a three-dimensional model, which offer you more clear understanding of the space, how the actually guide tent in the foreground is set up for accommodating the clans which are meeting at the moment, and how the tent of women are pitched behind the great tent, and how women are active with their daily activities, as you can see, milking, fetching water, and breastfeeding, and washing up, and
it's quite amazing.
By that you can have a clear, you know, understanding of the
importance.
Yeah, encampment life of tribal people within this living environment.
And this method of pop-up unfolding, it's quite amazing because actually you can divide the painting and extracts, and you can easily have the notion of space and
the notion of space. Yeah. Yes. And even for I told you that I use the notion of gaze in two ways. First, as a way of seeing. I actually deliberated the notion of gaze as way of seeing, which helped me to way of seeing in Persian miniature painting, because I found that in order to be able to extract the historical, cultural, social information from the images, first we need to understand the way of seeing by the painter, how the painter saw his living environment, and which methods he used to represent the outer world. First, we need to understand that. So actually, the pop-up images is the result of that deliberation. And the second was the act of seeing. The act of seeing in Persian culture. The act of seeing which brings different cultural, religious behaviors like veil, because when we talk about seeing, we should talk about not seeing, not allowed to be seeing, and how women were stopped from seeing the outer world by being secluded, or how they had visual access to the outer world. So this physical and visual access was very important within the images. that's why this folding and pop-up can help us to define the adjacent spaces, the physical and visual axis. When the image is flat, you can't even measure how the spaces are related or detached, or how the spaces are secluded or are related.
Yes, it seems like when we see it flat, it's very confusing, as you said before.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sarah, to ask, but there is any specific software they use to do this, or how does it work?
Just by hand cutting and folding.
Oh, really?
Yes, yes.
Oh, amazing.
I have some models there. I'm not sure if I can bring it to you.
Yeah, of course, please.
Ah, that's really great.
Very cool.
Yes.
Sorry, I just...
It's very good. Very.
Oh, wow.
Really.
It's very.
What
And then,
and
then by this, you can have access to the spaces.
Yes.
True.
You can even live with those characters inside the encampment, and it's very amazing.
Like a house doll. It's like a house of dolls.
Yeah,
doll house. Yes, doll's house. Yes.
It's very nice.
Yes, that's amazing. Yeah.
And via this event, I had the chance to look at the outer world from the gaze of women inside the buildings. And what they are experiencing or seeing at that exact moment. I can show you some examples here. And you can see the second folio, the urbanscape.
You mean the folding up? We are seeing the 7.
Yeah, urbanscape. Yes, yes.
Urbanscape. Yeah. So yeah, it's the actually earliest stage of this model, because then I extended the model to a very nice city. But it's
how long do you need to do all these
model
phases? Yes, the model.
It depends on the folio. Actually, for this urbanscape, it took me 1 year to fully develop the because I produced more than 3 versions of the model. Each time I discovered a new element and how these spaces are related. And by that, at the end, I suggest that this urbanscape is actually the presentation of Meydan Sahib Abad and a square in Tabriz at the time of Mir Sayyid Ali. I'm not sure if I should have something here to show you.
Oh, that is so nice. You basically made that miniature of painting coming to life, literally.
Yes.
Yeah, you can see a fully developed model of the city and how the shops are actually set along the mainstream of the bazaar, because I didn't describe you. This folio has a palace as the official and governmental center of the city, and have bazaar. And the bazaar has cistern, has mosque, has shops. And within this environment, public and private people, women, children are just busy doing their daily activities. You can see the final stage of the pop-up model at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay. And via this model, I even had the chance to look at the events via the, you can see here, there is actually image at the right. It's where women are looking at the banquet via the skylight at the top of the palace.
True, yeah. So it's
at the left, you can see the women here are looking at the royal banquet, which is happening at that time via the skylight at the top of the Ivan. And at the right, you can see their gaze. Okay, here they can see the king, they can see the dancers and entertainment team and part of the event. However, because of their culture, they are secluded and they are not accepted to take part in royal banquet, but still they do their best to get information, to look at their outer world behind their harem and secluded quarters by climbing to the top of the palace, standing at rooftop and just looking at the banquet via the skylight.
It's amazing to see. It's the perspective of one of the characters of the main scene, and so in this on the right we seeing this through the window. So it's really beautiful. Really, it's beautiful because
for me it was an exciting experience.
Yes,
really. I just live with these characters, and I think that okay, I can share and I can feel part of their experience, social experience.
Yes, for me, as to see it like this is to be inside the miniature and to look around me as if it, like you put it on a 3D model. So I see the palace, I see all the buildings around, and I can even see through the window what that woman is seeing. So it's amazing. It's really beautiful.
Yeah. No, it's an unbelievable idea, and the fact that you can actually, even that little details that you maybe do not understand, when you have this type of vision, you suddenly have a different view, and you can actually understand most of what is happening over there suddenly, it's quite amazing.
Yes.
I'm happy that people, even those people who are not familiar with Persian painting, and even Iranian people, it doesn't mean that if you are Iranian people, so you can understand this multifocal perspective, can have a better understanding and enjoy these images. And even after, seeing the 2 or 3 version of pop-up models, they start to reproduce other images in 3-dimensional model. And they because to understand the Persian miniature paintings, scholars suggest that the observer should readjust their minds to a very sophisticated way of seeing. And scholars offered lots of theoretical discussions about how a painter in Persian miniature see the outer world from like a mystic point of view and philosophy point of view. The painter wants to show the world from the point that God looks at people and this and that. But still at the end, the observer can get lots of help from these theoretical discussions. But I think these pop-up models can help the observer to do that readjustment more easily.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yes, because they feel inside of those miniatures. They feel the environment. It's like being inside it. So it's a vision. It's a completely different
vision.
Yes.
Sarah, we have just one of our viewers asking. Nelson is asking, which the period in which these paintings were made.
The paintings I chose are mainly produced between late 14th century to late 17th century Timurid and Safavid eras, and this particular one is the 16th century early Safavid era.
Okay, and because obviously we don't want to take all of your morning, I have one last question, unless you want to add something else as well, but it's maybe this great idea that you have to do this pop-in and fold molding modelings. Can we use? Do you think we can use that to any type of painting at all? Have you tried, or you think it will just make sense for this particular type of painting?
It depends on the quality of the painting. Actually, if the painting is based on multifocal perspective and has some qualifications, like I can more technically describe this. Let me just share one.
Thank you.
Image. Sorry, that's...
No, take your time.
Okay. Yes, I have it here. Okay. You have the image, a new one at the moment?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I described that Persian miniature painting is not based on linear perspective. It juxtaposed different points of view, like elevation, plan, and even during my study, I found that even section. And it's a kind of limitation in understanding the Persian miniature painting. But in my study, I used this feature as a chance to produce the pop-up models. How? I understand that when we have a full view of plan and a full view of elevation, if we just fold the painting, we can produce a pop-up model, as you can see here. However, based on that multifocal feature, even the juxtaposition of elevation and plan is just applied in the palace area, not in bazaar. The bazaar is completely illustrated based on different point of view. So a very
Oh, wow.
Yes.
you can see the next one.
Yes.
Okay. So it's the first folio I produced, and the idea of folding a pop-up was actually arise based on observing this folio. I found that, okay, if I fold this printed folio, I can produce a pop-up model. And after that, I found that, okay, it's a very basic model. Actually, it's not, it can't be applied to the bazaar areas. So I need to distinguish between the
Yeah.
And you can see this. Okay, good. And so I need to distinguish between the perspective of different parts. Here we have palace, and then we have bazaar area, and we have a country house at the background, and we have the rural area as the background. So first we need to cut these parts and differentiate between their perspective, and do the folding and pop-up based on that perspective. However, they are very ambiguous, but this feature actually provide the chance to produce that pop-up models. If any image has this quality, for sure we can do the same.
It's extraordinary.
Yes.
It's a very nice idea indeed. Sarah, I don't know if you want to add something else.
Just to add, as a researcher, I can say that this study, this approach is only one means to revise our the way we think, we understand the outer world and the past. And if it makes us, uncertain about what we see, we understand, and we assume as reality, and even if it makes us uncomfortable about our assumptions and rethink about the stereotypes, so I think my study achieved its aim.
True.
Yes, indeed, it does.
Definitely. No, but allow me to congratulate you, because this is simply amazing. It's a great idea. It's an amazing project.
Thank you, Joel.
And for sure, this will give us a lot of information, more than what we have, and like you said, in a different perspective as well. So this is just unbelievable.
Yes, and it
Thank
gives
you.
us,
Thank you.
and it gives us also other ideas. And I think that's why João asked you if we could apply this technique to other images that we have, because it gives us a lot of ideas about old images, historical images that we have,
Sure.
that sometimes we don't understand very well. So that's why I think João was asking you if we could apply it to other paintings, because this is amazing. This is really, it puts us ourselves in that scene. So I felt like I was looking through that window, and I was that woman looking through that
It's
window.
a very amazing experience.
Yes, it is.
Isn't it? Yeah.
So really, I'm amazed with your job and your patience, because one year doing this is really, 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 it's a great, beautiful job. Congratulations. I loved it.
Thank you.
Really.
Thank you so much. Actually, I had some messages from even India. They had some miniature painting belongs to Mughal era, and they asked same question if they can apply this fold and pop-up. And always I just ask the person, just send me the image, and so both of us can just think about how we can do.
Yeah.
So if there are people watching this video and have some images in their mind that are curious to decode the space, or maybe apply the same method or even some new methods, I will be happy to have the image and we can think about it together.
Yeah, thank you, because I think João is already thinking about it, and so am I. I'm already seeing.
Just send me the image.
I do really think that with this technique, you will revolutionize most of the way that we look at some paintings. And again, if you can apply this technique, I think it will be a big advance in a way that we look at it, definitely.
Yes,
I hope so.
Sometimes we trust so much on technology, and we have it here that we just need to have to love what we are doing, because that shows a lot of love from you applying it to that work, and to have a lot of patience, because I congratulate you, because it must take a lot of patience. but it's not the technology. When João asked you about what software what you use, and when you said, no, I cut it. And
cut it.
Yes, so it means that sometimes it's not just technology that we have to trust on, but in our own feelings about that, and how
imagination, yes,
and how we want to see it. So okay, I think you maybe I'm wrong, but I think you thought, how am I inside that miniature? How do I feel inside that miniature? So let me deconstruct this all this scenery and make me inside of it and looking around. So it gives us a different perspective.
Sure, sure. You need.
I was expecting you to say a name of a software, but you do it.
Yes,
I'm not good at software. I'm not good at software. Maybe that's why I choose to, just use small cutters and then paper and this. And actually, I start my work. From these printed papers.
Wow.
It's just, and then just to add some support to the elements and the structures, I add a small piece of cardboards or foams, but it's the only thing I
yes, no software, so we cannot do it. Yes, we cannot apply it. No.
You just need to live with these miniatures and live within that miniatures.
Yes.
You saw that the first pop-up model I applied for this urban escape was very simple, but didn't reflect the reality, the capacity of this cityscape. And it took me 1 year or even more to suddenly, even during night, I just had a dream of this folio and found that, I had a mistake. These two spaces should be like this or that. And the other day I started with a second model. And through this, I hope that I paved the way for historians who are willing to use the Persian miniature paintings to study architecture, behavioral study, even anthropology, visual anthropology, even sociocultural studies, women studies, because like the current folio, I know that some scholars refer to this folio to support their discussion about the life of women in medieval era in Isfahan city. But because they understood the space as wrong, and they assumed that, it's a palace, and introduced this folio as nighttime in a palace. So they couldn't actually describe the role of women within these spaces correctly.
Exactly.
Like there is a woman fetching water from cistern, and that scholars thought that, it's a kitchen, and the woman is preparing food for the feast. However, the palace is a separate space, and the woman is inside the bazaar, which is a public space. So being at public space during night fetching water, it's completely different from
a lot of different. It tells you different information.
Yeah. And another woman is selling something in a bowl to a court man.
It changes the narrative. The narrative changes.
Yes.
I do really think that you've paved this path already, and we will hear a lot about you in the near future.
Yes,
I hope so. Thank you for your support.
No, thank you so much, and thank you for being here with us to accept this invitation and to take some of your morning to speak with us. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for
Thank you.
providing me this opportunity. I always get energy when talking about these paintings because I can't stop enjoying them. I love.
And you shouldn't stop enjoying it because it's a beautiful work, and I wish you.
Yeah, I love them. Yeah. However, you know, PhD study is very, very, very difficult. But through this, you know, excavation and digging out, I got enough energy to just overcome.
Yes, yes.
Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much once again, Sarah.
Thank you, Joao. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you for
Thank you.
everyone who was watching us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.